The punishment. The great hall of the alien council was filled with cold silence. Tall pillars carved with glowing runes stood around the chamber, and the elders sat on high thrones, their faces hard and unforgiving. In the center of the floor stood a young alien woman, her wrists bound with silver chains that shimmered with energy. Her name was Liara, daughter of a noble house, once admired for her strength and beauty, but now she stood accused of treason. The crowd whispered about her crime. She had shown mercy to humans, the most hated species in their empire. While her people believed humans were dangerous and unworthy, she had dared to speak in their defense. She had even helped a group of human prisoners escape punishment. For the council, this was unforgivable. The High Elder raised his hand and the hall became quiet. "Liara of House Veyrin," he said, his voice echoing, "you have shamed your people. You have broken our law, and for that, you will be punished." Liara lifted her chin, her silver eyes burning with anger. "I only showed mercy," she replied, her voice steady. "Is mercy now a crime among us?" The elder slammed his staff against the floor. The sound thundered. "Silence," he commanded. "You are no longer free to speak of honor. Your punishment will be worse than death. We will bind you to a human. You will marry him, live with him, and know what it means to suffer." Gasps filled the chamber. The punishment was cruel, a fate meant to break her pride. Aliens saw humans as weak, dirty, and dishonorable. To be tied to one as a wife was a humiliation beyond imagination, but the council believed this was justice. Liara's heart pounded. She clenched her fists around the chains. She wanted to scream, to fight, but she knew resistance would only bring more pain. Still, her spirit did not bow. "If you think I will be broken," she whispered, "then you do not know me." The guards pulled her away from the council, dragging her through long corridors of black stone. They threw her into a transport chamber, the door locking shut behind her. She sat in the shadows, her mind racing, a husband, a human, forced upon her. She thought of their faces, their clumsy voices, their fragile bodies. Her people called them dangerous animals, but also pathetic. How could she live with such a creature? The ship carried her to the human settlement under alien watch. From the window she saw small cities, built with steel and firelight. Humans walked in the streets, working, laughing, living despite the control of the alien empire. Liara felt her chest tighten, not with pity this time, but with rage. This would be her prison. At the gates of the settlement she was brought before her chosen husband. The human stood tall, broad-shouldered, with calm eyes that watched her without fear. His name was Daniel, a soldier who had fought to defend his people, captured and forced into service under alien rule. He had scars across his arms, and his jaw was strong with quiet defiance. Unlike the humans she had imagined, he did not look broken. "This is your punishment," the guard sneered at Liara. "From this day, he is your husband." Daniel glanced at the alien woman, his eyes steady, not cruel, not mocking. He did not bow to her, nor did he speak, but in his silence there was something powerful. Liara narrowed her eyes, expecting disgust or fear, but instead she saw calm strength. They placed her hand in his, forcing the bond. The moment his skin touched hers, Liara felt a strange shiver. It was not weakness, it was not pain, it was something else, a warmth that spread through her veins like fire. She pulled her hand back quickly, her heart racing. "What was that?" Daniel said nothing, only gave a small nod, as if he too had felt something. The guards laughed, thinking her punishment had begun, but Liara stood frozen, confused, her mind caught on that single touch. This was supposed to be suffering, but why had it felt so different? That night, she was taken to the house where she would live with him. It was simple, built of stone and wood, nothing like the shining palaces of her world. She sat near the window, watching the stars, her thoughts restless. Daniel moved quietly in the house, preparing food, lighting a small fire. He did not try to speak to her, did not try to command her. His silence was heavy, but it was not unkind. Liara clenched her fists, whispering to herself, "This is only punishment, nothing more." But her heart kept replaying the moment when his hand had touched hers. The warmth, the fire, the feeling she could not explain. She hated it, and yet, deep inside, she feared it was only the beginning. The human husband. The night was long and silent. The small human house seemed fragile compared to the cold palaces of Liara's people. She sat near the fire, her silver eyes fixed on the flames, refusing to look at the human man who now shared this space with her. He moved quietly, his steps strong but not loud, every action careful, as if he lived in discipline. This was Daniel, her punishment, her husband forced by cruel decree. Liara expected him to mock her, or to take pride in her humiliation, but he did nothing of the kind. He placed a bowl of food near her, not speaking, then sat at the other side of the room. The food smelled strange, filled with human spices, but her stomach ached with hunger. Still, her pride held her back. She would not eat what he offered, not yet. Daniel did not press her. He simply ate his own meal, the crackling firelight carving shadows on his scarred face. Liara studied him in secret. His body carried the marks of war, his arms strong, his back straight. There was no fear in him, no broken spirit. Instead, there was quiet power. This unsettled her more than hatred ever could. Finally, her hunger betrayed her pride. She took the bowl and tasted the food. It was simple, but it warmed her body, and Daniel said nothing, only gave the faintest nod as if acknowledging a small victory. The silence stretched between them, not empty, but heavy with questions neither dared to ask. When the fire dimmed, Liara spoke at last, her voice sharp. "Do you enjoy this?" she asked. A human taking an alien wife as punishment. Daniel looked at her, his brown eyes steady. "No," he replied simply. "I did not choose this, just as you did not." His honesty struck her. She had expected arrogance, but instead he sounded almost weary. "You are my punishment," she whispered bitterly. "Yet you sit as if this is normal." Daniel's gaze held hers, unflinching. "I do not see you as punishment," he said quietly. "I see chains on us both. Different chains, but chains all the same." The words stung her pride, yet they lingered in her mind. She turned away, unwilling to admit the truth hidden in them. The next morning, she woke to the sound of movement outside. Daniel was working in the yard, carrying heavy logs of wood, his shirt damp with sweat. His strength surprised her, for her people always called humans weak, fragile, easy to break. But his body moved with discipline, shaped by hardship. Every strike of the axe against wood echoed with determination. Liara stepped outside, her chains of marriage heavy in her heart. She expected him to notice her and bow or boast, but instead he kept working, silent and focused. This silence confused her more than words could. Humans were supposed to beg, to cling, to show weakness, but Daniel behaved as though he needed no one's approval, not even hers. Later that day, a group of alien guards came to inspect her punishment. They sneered at Daniel, calling him beast, calling him servant. One pushed him hard, expecting him to stumble, but Daniel did not fall. He stood firm, his jaw tight, his eyes calm. He did not fight back, not while Liara was watching, but there was iron in his silence. The guards laughed and left, convinced the punishment was cruel enough. But Liara's heart was unsettled. She had seen something in Daniel's stillness, a kind of strength she could not name. That night she asked him, her voice low, "Why did you not fight them? Why did you let them insult you?" Daniel answered without hesitation, "Because if I fight, they punish you, not me." Her breath caught. She stared at him in disbelief. "You would endure shame to protect me," she whispered. Daniel did not smile, did not soften his voice. "I do what must be done," he said. "I will not be the reason you suffer more." The warmth returned in her chest, the same feeling she had felt when his hand first touched hers. She hated it, feared it, yet could not deny it. He was not supposed to be kind, not supposed to protect her, and yet he did. Her punishment was not unfolding as the council had planned. Instead, with every word, every action, the human made her question everything she had been taught. That night, she could not sleep. She watched him from the shadows as he sat near the fire, sharpening a blade, the firelight catching in his eyes. There was no malice in him, no cruelty, only quiet strength and patience. For the first time, she wondered if the punishment might not be his to bear, but hers. Not because she was bound to a human, but because she was beginning to feel something she should not, the forbidden spark. Days passed slowly, and Liara found herself caught between anger and confusion. She had expected her punishment to crush her spirit, to make her despise the human she was forced to live with. Yet every small action from Daniel unsettled her heart. He never raised his voice, never forced her to obey. Instead, he treated her with a strange respect she had never known. One morning, she rose to find the table already prepared, bread and fruit laid out neatly. Daniel sat across the room, sharpening a blade with calm precision. She frowned. "Wow, how do you do this?" she asked. "You gain nothing from serving me." Daniel looked up, his eyes steady. "It is not serving," he said simply. "It is living, and if we must live together, I will not make it worse." His words sank into her mind like a weight. Her people had told her humans were selfish, cruel, and dangerous, but this man seemed the opposite. She ate in silence, her thoughts twisting. Later that day, she wandered into the settlement, guarded from afar by alien soldiers. Humans worked in the fields, repaired machines, carried goods, their faces tired but determined. Children laughed and ran through the dusty streets, chasing each other with sticks. For the first time, she saw humans not as beasts, but as survivors, living under the shadow of alien rule, yet still holding joy. Her chest tightened at the sight. Daniel walked beside her, silent as always, yet his presence felt like a shield. The alien guards sneered at him, muttering insults, but he ignored them. Liara watched him closely, wondering how he endured such humiliation without breaking. When she asked, he replied, "Because if I let them break me, they win, and I refuse to give them that victory." Those words struck her deeply. She remembered the chains on her wrists in the council hall, the cruel eyes of the elders, the way they had wanted her to suffer, and now she wondered, was Daniel not also their prisoner, just as she was? Different chains, the same cage. That night, as the fire burned low, she dared to sit closer to him. The silence between them was no longer heavy, but strangely warm. Daniel glanced at her, then offered a small piece of bread from his plate. Their hands touched again, just for a moment. A spark ran through her body, sharp and sudden. She froze, pulling her hand back, but her heart beat faster. "What was that?" she whispered, staring at her hand as though it had betrayed Hank. Daniel did not answer, his face unreadable, but she saw his jaw tighten. He had felt it too. Liara turned away quickly, her cheeks burning. This was not supposed to happen. She was meant to hate him, to despise every moment of his presence, yet her body had reacted as if it had found something familiar, something dangerous. The days grew heavier with unspoken tension. Every time their hands brushed by accident, every glance that lingered too long, every silence that felt almost like understanding, Liara's heart fought against her mind. She told herself it was a trick, that humans were manipulative, but the truth whispered louder inside her. This man was different, and she could not deny it. One evening, a storm swept across the settlement, rain pouring from the sky, thunder shaking the earth. The roof of their small house leaked and water rushed in through broken windows. Daniel worked quickly to secure the doors, but a sudden crack of thunder startled Liara. She stumbled, slipping on the wet floor, and he caught her in his arms. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, her body pressed against his strength holding her steady. Their eyes met, the storm raging outside but silence falling between them. Her chest rose and fell with quick breaths, and in that moment she did not see him as punishment. She saw him as something forbidden, something dangerous, yet something she could not pull away from. She stepped back quickly, her voice sharp, though her heart trembled. "Do not touch me again," she said, though part of her did not believe her own words. Daniel only nodded, his face calm, but his eyes carried something unspoken, something she could not understand. That night, Liara lay awake, listening to the storm fade into quiet. Her fingers still remembered his touch, her heart still raced with the memory. She turned to the window, whispering to herself, "This is wrong. This cannot be. I must not feel this." But deep inside, she knew the spark had been lit, and sparks, no matter how small, always had the power to start a fire. Enemies in the shadows. The storm had passed, leaving the settlement damp and quiet, but inside Liara's chest, the storm had only begun. Every time she looked at Daniel, she remembered the spark of his touch, and it unsettled her more than chains or threats ever could. She tried to bury the feeling, to remind herself that he was her punishment, yet the memory clung to her like fire on dry wood. Days turned into weeks, and whispers began to spread among the alien guards. They watched Liara too closely, their eyes sharp, their voices filled with suspicion. The council had not sent her here only to suffer. They had sent her to be tested, to see if she would betray her people by falling into the trap of humanity. Unknown to her, spies had been placed around the settlement, ready to report any weakness. One evening, as Liara and Daniel returned from the market, shadows moved in the alleys. A group of alien soldiers stepped forward, blocking their path. Their leader, tall and armored, sneered at Daniel. "So this is the beast you were given," he said, his voice dripping with cruelty. "Tell us, Liara, does his touch disgust you yet, or have you started to crave it?" Liara froze, anger rising inside her. Daniel stood silent, his body tense but calm. The soldier stepped closer, his eyes mocking. "Perhaps we should test this husband of yours, see if he can bleed like the rest of his kind." He reached for his blade, but before he could draw it fully, Daniel's hand shot out, gripping his wrist with iron strength. For a moment, the soldier's smirk vanished, replaced by shock at the human's power. Daniel's voice was low, steady, dangerous. "You will not touch her." Gasps came from the other soldiers, their weapons half drawn, but Daniel released the leader before a fight could start. The alien stepped back, glaring with hatred but also with caution. Liara. His heart raced. She had seen many warriors in her life, but none had stood so fearless against her people's soldiers, especially not a human. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the soldiers lingered, watching, their eyes full of suspicion. That night, the house felt smaller, the air heavy. Liara sat near the fire, her voice quiet. "You should not have done that. If they report you, the council will punish us both." Daniel looked at her, his expression calm. "I will not stand aside while they threaten you." His words burned through her, both warming and frightening. She turned away, whispering to herself, "This is dangerous. This is wrong." The next day, another shadow moved in their lives. A cloaked figure approached Liara when she walked alone near the well. The figure revealed himself as an envoy of the council, his eyes cold. "Do not forget why you are here," he hissed. "Your punishment is to suffer, not to grow close to the human. Betray him, remind yourself who you are, or your life will end by our hand." Liara's breath caught, fear and rage twisting together. She gave no answer, only a silent nod, but inside her heart warred with itself. The council wanted her broken, yet Daniel's strength and kindness made her question everything she had believed. If she betrayed him, she would save herself, but something deep within refused the thought. That night, she could not keep the silence anymore. She turned to Daniel, her voice sharp but trembling. "Do you not see? You are my punishment. You are meant to destroy me, yet you stand there as if you carry no chains. Why?" Daniel put down the blade he was sharpening, his eyes calm. "Because I refuse to be broken," he said. "They want me to kneel, but I will not, and they want you to hate me, but I will not give them that victory either." Liara stared at him, her chest tight. Every word he spoke was like a blade cutting through her doubts. For the first time, she realized her greatest fear was not the punishment, not the council, but the growing truth. Inside her heart, she was beginning to care for him. The shadows outside grew darker, the spies watching, the council waiting for her fall. But inside the small human house, a quiet fire had been lit, and Liara knew that sooner or later the fire would burn too bright to be hidden, and when it did, enemies in the shadows would strike. The breaking point. The days that followed were heavy with tension. Liara could feel the eyes of spies on her wherever she went. The alien soldiers no longer hid their suspicion. They whispered in the streets, they laughed at her silence, they mocked Daniel when he passed. It was clear the council was waiting for her to stumble, to fail her punishment. One night, a message arrived from the high elders, a sealed order written in glowing ink, delivered by a guard with cold eyes. Liara opened it with trembling hands, her chest tightening as she read. The words were clear, cruel, final. "Prove your loyalty to your people, betray the human husband, or your blood will be spilled before the council." Her hands shook as the scroll slipped from her fingers. Daniel picked it up, reading it quietly, his jaw tightening. He said nothing for a long moment, only staring into the fire. At last he spoke, his voice steady. They want you to choose between them and me. Liara's breath caught, shame and fear twisting inside her. I cannot defy them, she whispered. If I do, they will kill me, and perhaps you too. Daniel looked at her, his eyes calm but filled with something fierce. Then let them try, he said. I will not run, and I will not beg. His courage shook her, but it also frightened her. He did not understand the cruelty of the council, the power they held. She turned away, pressing her hands to her face, whispering, This was never meant to happen. I was supposed to hate you, not... Her voice broke before the words could finish. The next morning, she was summoned to the council's chamber. The guards dragged Daniel with her, forcing him to kneel on the stone floor. The High Elder's voice thundered across the hall. You have been tested, Liara, and now the final test is before you. Prove your loyalty by striking this human down. End him, and you will be forgiven. Refuse, and you will share his death. The crowd of aliens watched eagerly, their eyes burning with cruelty. A weapon was placed in her hand, its blade shimmering with energy. Her fingers trembled, her heart raced, and for the first time, Liara felt true fear. Not fear of death, but fear of what choice she would make. Daniel looked up at her, his eyes steady, unbroken. Do what you must, he said calmly. But know this, they cannot chain what you truly are inside. Tears burned her eyes. How could he stand so fearless when his life balanced on the edge of her hand? She gripped the weapon tighter, her body shaking. The council shouted, Strike him! Prove yourself! But Liara's heart screamed louder than their voices. In that moment, she saw everything clearly. The council did not want justice. They wanted control. They wanted her spirit shattered, her will destroyed, and Daniel, the human they had given her as punishment, was the only one who refused to bow. He had become her mirror, her strength, her forbidden spark. With a cry, Liara spun and threw the weapon to the floor, the blade clattering against the stone. Her voice rang out, fierce and unyielding. I will not betray him. I will not betray myself. Gasps filled the chamber. The elders rose in fury. You dare defy us, the High Elder roared. You choose a human over your own blood. Liara stood tall, her silver eyes blazing. I choose truth, she said. I choose freedom. The guards rushed forward, seizing her by the arms, chains clamping around her wrists. Daniel struggled against his captors, rage flashing across his face, but the soldiers held him down. The elder slammed his staff, his voice cold as stone. Then you will die, both of you. Liara's heart pounded, but for the first time she felt no shame, no weakness. She had chosen, and though the price was death, her soul was free. She turned her head, meeting Daniel's eyes, and whispered, If this is the end, then I will not face it alone. The council roared with fury. The crowd demanded blood, but somewhere deep inside, Liara felt a spark of defiance. She knew this was not the end, not yet, for sparks could become flames, and flames could burn even the oldest of thrones. Love or death. The cell was dark and damp, the stone walls cold against Liara's skin. Chains bound her wrists once again, heavy and unforgiving. The council had decreed her execution at dawn. Her betrayal of their will would be punished with death. Beside her, in another cell across the narrow hall, Daniel sat chained as well, his face calm despite the sentence. Liara could not look away from him. In the flickering torchlight, his eyes carried no fear, only quiet determination. You should not have chosen me, he said softly, his voice steady. You could have lived. She shook her head, her heart heavy but firm. To betray you would have been worse than death, she whispered. I chose the truth. Silence hung between them, thick and powerful. For a long time they said nothing, only watching each other across the shadows. Finally, Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. They will not take us without a fight. Liara frowned. What can you do? You are chained like me. But Daniel's lips curved into the faintest smile. They underestimate humans. They always have. As the night deepened, footsteps echoed in the hall. A guard passed by, yawning, careless. Daniel's eyes narrowed, his body tense. When the guard leaned too close to the bars, Daniel struck like lightning, grabbing his arm through the bars, twisting with sudden strength. The guard gasped in pain, dropping his weapon, and Daniel yanked at it close. With quick force, he struck the guard unconscious, pulling the keys from his belt. Liara's eyes widened in shock. He moved with speed and precision, like a warrior trained for survival. Within moments, Daniel had freed himself and crossed to her cell, unlocking the chains. Her wrists trembled as the weight fell away. "You risk everything," she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel met her eyes, his jaw strong. "I told you. I will not let them break us." They slipped through the corridors, shadows clinging to the walls. Alarms had not yet sounded, but danger lurked everywhere. Liara's heart pounded with every step, her body both terrified and alive. She had never imagined a human could move with such strength, such control. It was as though the fire she had felt in his touch now burned in his every action. At one corner, 2 guards appeared suddenly, weapons raised. Daniel shoved Liara behind him, deflecting the first strike with the stolen blade. The clash rang through the hall, sparks flying as steel met energy. Liara's breath caught as Daniel fought with raw power, his movements fueled by fury and purpose. He cut one guard down with swift precision, then struck the other hard, sending him crashing into the wall. Liara stepped forward, her voice urgent. "We cannot fight them all. The whole council will come for us." Daniel nodded, his breath heavy. "Then we run, together." They rushed through the outer gates, the cold night air biting their skin, but shouts rose behind them, soldiers pouring into the courtyard, weapons flashing, torches lit the walls, arrows aimed from above. Liara froze, knowing they could not outrun so many. Daniel grabbed her hand, pulling her close. His grip was firm, unyielding, the same spark shooting through her veins again. "If we die," he said, his voice low and fierce, "we die together." Liara's chest burned with emotions she could no longer deny. This man, once her punishment, was now her strength, her fire, her choice. She lifted her chin, her silver eyes blazing. "Then let them come," she whispered. "I will not let them take you from me." The soldiers closed in, the ring of steel echoing through the night. Daniel stood ready, blade in hand, Liara at his side. They were outnumbered, outmatched, but in that moment they were unbroken. The council had wanted her to suffer, but instead they had forged something far more dangerous, a bond between human and alien, a bond that no chains could destroy. The first wave of soldiers charged, and Daniel met them head-on. Liara grabbed a fallen weapon, fighting at his side, her heart thundering with every strike. For the first time she was not fighting for her people nor for duty, she was fighting for him, for them both, for the fire that now burned too brightly to be denied. The battle raged through the night, and though their bodies tired, their spirits only grew stronger. Every strike, every breath, every glance they shared was filled with unspoken truth. This was no longer punishment, it was love, fierce and defiant. And as the dawn began to rise, Liara knew their story was only beginning, a new beginning. The dawn broke over the battlefield, the sky painted in shades of fire and gold. Liara stood beside Daniel, her breath heavy, her body aching, but her spirit unbroken. Around them, fallen soldiers lay scattered, their weapons silent at last. The courtyard smelled of smoke and iron, the air thick with the weight of what they had done. The surviving guards backed away, fear flickering in their eyes. No human and no traitor had ever stood against so many and survived. Yet here they were, side by side, their bond unshaken. Whispers spread among the soldiers, murmurs that carried across the stone walls. Perhaps the council was wrong, some said. Perhaps the human is not weak. The High Elder appeared at the top of the stairs, his staff glowing with power, his voice thundered across the courtyard. "You dare defy us. You dare unite with the enemy. You are nothing but traitors, and traitors must burn." Energy crackled at the tip of his staff, the promise of death in every spark. Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between Liara and the Elder. His blade was chipped, his body bruised, but his stance was firm. Liara's heart pounded. She had never seen such courage, not even among her own warriors. She moved beside him, lifting her weapon, her voice clear. No, Elder, we are not traitors. We are the future you fear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Elder's eyes burned with rage, but hesitation crept into the soldiers' faces. They had seen Liara fight for him. They had seen Daniel endure what no human should. Doubt was a poison, and it spread quickly. The Elder raised his staff to strike, but before the energy could fall, Daniel charged. The clash was thunderous, steel against raw power. Liara rushed with him, her weapon striking in rhythm with his. Together they moved as one, their bond guiding their blades. The Elder stumbled under the fury of their assault, his staff shattering against the ground. The silence that followed was deafening. The soldiers lowered their weapons, uncertain. The Elder lay defeated, his power broken, and Liara's voice rang out across the courtyard. Look at what you fear. Look at what you tried to destroy. A bond between human and alien, stronger than chains, stronger than hate. This is the truth you cannot kill. The crowd wavered, whispers turning into shouts. Some cried for freedom, others for justice, the walls of the old order shaking under the weight of her words. Daniel stood at her side, his hand brushing hers, not as punishment, but as choice. The spark that had begun in silence now burned like a flame across two worlds. Liara turned to him, her voice soft but strong. They wanted us broken, but instead they made us whole. Daniel's eyes met hers, steady and warm. Then let us build something new, he said. Together they walked from the courtyard, the soldiers parting before them. Some bowed their heads, others simply watched, but none dared stop them, for in their hearts they had seen something undeniable. The union of human and alien, born of punishment but transformed into power. Days later, the whispers had spread far beyond the council's reach. Stories of Liara and the human warrior reached villages, cities, even the farthest colonies. Rebellion stirred, hope grew, and people spoke of change, not because of war, but because of a bond that had defied the oldest of laws. Liara stood with Daniel on a hill outside the settlement, the stars shining above them. She thought of the night she first touched his hand, the spark that had frightened her so deeply. Now she understood what it meant. It was not weakness. It was not shame. It was the beginning of a fire that would burn across the galaxy. She turned to him, her silver eyes bright. They called you my punishment, she whispered, but you were my freedom. Daniel took her hand, his voice quiet but certain. And you were never my chains. The stars stretched endless before them. A new path waiting, together, human and alien, they would walk it. Not as enemies, not as punishment, but as partners. And in that moment, as dawn touched the horizon once more, Liara knew their story was not an ending. It was only the beginning of something far greater.